Welcome back to another YouTube video today where I am joined by Tom. We're talking West Brom here today, non-stop talking about the Albion. There's transfers, news going on left, right and centre. We're going to talk about absolutely everything. We're going to go all over the place. There's going to be a lot of diversions, a lot of tangents, but that's what we're here for. Tom, how are you doing anyway?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, really good. Like I said to you, I've got a bit of a trip planned at the weekend, so yeah, excited for that. But yeah, keen to discuss the baggies today, man, especially with all the news that's been announced today. All the transfer wheeling and dealing. So yeah, looking forward to it, bud.
I was going to say it's mental. Literally, in the time that we've spoken, where I've said, "Do you fancy coming on the channel to talk about the Albion?" and we're like, "Oh yeah, we're just going to just have a bit of a chit chat, see how the season's gone." It's gone absolutely mental in the last 3 days. So I was about to say, where do we start? Okay, so let's start off with the Furlong kind of that first
Yeah.
transfer that's happened. Then that looks like it's happening. What do you make of the fee and everything that's going on with that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to be honest, mate. And it's kind of it's funny because off the back of the last game, there's a few moans and groans about him, from the Albion faithful. I think the fan base is quite split when it comes to Furlong. Those that rate him and think he's a solid performer for us, vital part of the team, and others who aren't too keen and think we should be making moves for a new right back. And that was kind of rumbling on, and then like you said, all of a sudden, it's been announced that he's off to Ipswich for around 3.5, I think, and then
Yeah,
potentially 4 million with add-ons. Look, I think, be interesting to get your take, but I think we've done well with the fee there. Considering what I think he's 29, I think, nearly 30. I think we've got a good price there, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why we've made the decision to let him go, is that Ipswich have obviously come in and offered us a real tasty fee for him. So, yeah, I'm more on the side of I rate Furlong. I think
same
he's
as me.
been a good performer for us. Yeah, especially in the Championship, mate. I think he's been a real solid performer for us. You know, just there's obviously been a few occasions where he's had a few dud performances, poor performances. But on the whole, he's always a kind of 7 out of 10 performer for me. So, I will be sad to see him go. But like I said, I think the money that we're going to get for him, is really good business from the club. So it's a bit of one of those for me. So I don't know what your opinion is, bud.
Yeah, completely agree. And when I saw the fee, I kind of just had to make sure I'd put my glasses on. I read it without my glasses, like that can't be right. I put my glasses on straight away. I was like, that is a great fee, especially as you said, the age wise. Don't get me wrong. I think ability wise, I think he's incredible. One of the best fullbacks in the league, and I think he has been for so many years. And I think he's a bit of a frustrating player because you try and argue with a lot of the fan base that really do, because there's no in between. So you either love him or you
No.
hate him. There's not many fans that sit on the fence with him, and I can understand because he does occasionally does really let you down and kind of really frustrates you.
Yeah.
And he has moments like that, the silly red cards, sometimes the little things like that, and you just think, oh, you're not helping me here in this argument. But overall, I think
Yeah.
he's been a great servant to the club, and the fact that we're going to get the fee you've even suggested is it's crazy. It's great money, especially for his
Yeah.
age. And you kind of think the way the club are moving now, and we're signing a lot of younger players and things, players with that haven't got the big names and things. So you can imagine we'll be signing two players with that fee, which is incredible, really, when you think about it now. And as you said, there's always a plan now going forward with the new model and the new ownership. So I think it's exciting times. And I think what we're starting to see is every player has got a fee, a price tag. And we haven't had that in years where we hold on to players maybe where we should have sold them. And you kind of think then in hindsight, oh, we probably should have sold them at that time. Whereas now we've kind of got a price tag for every player. And if it's met, they're gone, no matter how much you kind of love them or no matter how good they are or how good their potential is. And I kind of think sustainable wise, it's a great way of looking at it and working as a club. But I do think in the future that will help us in the long run because you've seen it with exactly the same with Hegem and things. No player is that no player has got no tag price tag. We've got the fee we wanted and they've gone, and it's simple as that.
Yeah.
But then the replacements are back through the door. So that's kind of the way I look at it with Furlong. I think in the grand scheme of things, I've got to try and step back and take my bias hat off. As much as I love him, I think it's probably the right thing.
No, I think you're spot on, mate. Look, I agree. I think the model that we're now kind of deploying is it's what's made the likes of Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth, so successful, come through from the Championship and then stabilise in the Premier League is like you said, knowing the best time to sell, your assets and then reinvest and start the cycle once again, and I think we're very much taking a similar route, aren't we? With
Yeah.
Patel and Co now, that's the way they want to play it. So yeah, look, and I think it's a good move for him as well. You got to look at it from Furlong's perspective. Ipswich come down from the Premier League last season, one of the favourites to go up from the Championship this season. There's obviously a few Albion boys there that he's
Yeah.
going to know. They seem to be kind
It's
of.
bizarre, isn't it?
It is bizarre, isn't it? 100% that now they've got Palmer, Townsend, O'Shea, Kipre, and Furlong, so they can have a
And
a
they've got
complete
Button
back
as a
line,
backup as well, haven't they?
and Button as well. I forgot
It's
about Button.
bizarre,
So
isn't it?
it
I
is.
saw
It
a
is
really funny
bonkers.
tweet earlier. It said after this signing, they're nailed on for a 12th finish this season. I thought it really made me chuckle. I was like, yeah, that's good. I was like, that's good.
Yeah, there's been some good. I saw one where it was the Thanos Infinity Gauntlet, and it was just like Furlong was the last one. I thought that was
Good, good, good.
quite funny as well. But this is the one thing though, Furlong, that is those long throws, man. I think how
Mm.
important. I was chatting to some Albion fans the other night, and yeah, we were all saying that we appreciate Furlong splits the fan base, but I think we can all agree that long throw is an absolute weapon, and it gets us a lot of goals. So that is, it's going to be disappointing to see that go, isn't it?
Yeah. And not only that, I think just how great he was in the air. There was quite a few times throughout this West Brom career running through corners, running at the near post, flick-ons, whether somebody nicks it on or he scores himself, or even just from goal kicks. We've used him for so long, and I think that's one side of his game. He's very rarely beaten in the air and things. It's little things like that where you don't appreciate how important a player is. As you said, the throw-ins is massive because I didn't even think about that until you just said it. Then you just reminded me again. Something that I think we've just become accustomed to. We're just so used to
Yeah,
seeing it. It's going to be interesting losing kind of that side of the game. But I think
yeah.
overall, as you said, it's kind of a positive. Then we'll move on then to another player, which there's a lot of drama going on now. Fellows, with the fee being linked with Southampton, looking like that's pretty much all done. Bearing in mind, we're recording this, by the way, on the 28th, and it's 5:45. So I'm just going to say that now as we're recording, just before anyone jumps on us going, you don't know if something's happened, because it could have changed, who
Yeah.
knows, especially with the Albion. But what do you make? Reports saying it's around £10 million with add-ons up to 15 and sell-on clauses included, which is what I've read today. What do you think?
Yeah, look, if it's up to if that's true, and we're talking more around the £15 million figure with add-ons, etc., sell-on clauses, etc., that's getting closer to what I thought we should be achieving.
Yeah,
What I was reading earlier was that it was around £10 million all in, and that there was maybe going to be some sort of sell-on clause included. And if that was the case, I'd even tweeted myself saying I felt we'd lowballed that a little bit. I felt. Yeah, I think there's again. I've seen the Albion fans kind of clashing heads and kind of having a debate amongst themselves, and it's been quite interesting to see, to be honest, because I think there's definitely more saying we should be getting more for him, based on what he achieved last season. He's England under-21 international. Kind of in comparison to maybe some similar players that have been sold, teams in the Championship, etc. And I definitely think there's an argument towards that, But then I've also seen kind of Albion fans saying, I don't know, as a fan base, have we maybe got our rose tinted glasses on a little bit? Is he as good
yeah,
as we think he is? And I think there's definitely a case to that argument as well, if I'm being honest with you. But look, I think if the deal is going to be more around that £15 million figure, I think I'd be more happy. If it was kind of more in line with the £10 million, and that's all we were getting, I think I would be disappointed. I do think, the current market, I think he's probably worth more than that. And I think the majority of Albion fans would probably agree with me there and be disappointed if that's the case. But it's like you said, there's lots of stories, lots of rumours doing the rounds at the minute, as to what that actual figure will be. And I think
because that depends who you read, isn't it? Because a lot of people are saying it's 10, and then some people are saying it's going up to 15. Some people are saying it's only dependent on really, really specific niche kind of add-ons and depending on. So you don't really know. So I'm
No.
hoping, because I'm going by the people I usually read, of saying it's 10
Yeah.
and it can go up to 15, but obviously it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
specific things, which is I'm then looking at as a 15 million in my head because I'm trying to get my head around it because you will only usually sell because you believe they're going to be activated. That's the way I kind of look at it and things. And
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I'm really split. If you asked me earlier, I was fuming with it. And then as the day's gone on a bit, I've seen the kind of players we compare into with fees and
Yeah.
things. I think it's a really difficult one because they're not like for like. There's not been, because I see the dibbling shout getting thrown about. It's a little bit
Yeah.
different. Again, you can't really
Yeah. Yeah.
compare the two because one's playing in the Premier League and little things like that. And I understand that. But I think the thing that's just frustrating me more than anything is I think it's just a shame to see players like that go. Those are the ones where you see them, and obviously it's not a sidestep. I'm not going to try and kid myself. They're a step above because they've still got a lot of the Premier League talent. They've got a great
Mhm.
manager. They're investing in the squad and things. It's just a bit sad, isn't it, when you see them moving within the Championship? I think that's why the fee hurts more than anything for me. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, mate, that's absolutely spot on. I was saying this, like if he was to have gone to a Premier League team, because I know Everton were strongly
Yeah,
linked with him, weren't they? Throughout the summer, but then that kind of died down once they brought in Grealish and Diblin. So, um, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's a little bit disappointing to see him move to another team within the Championship. You're spot on. Southampton are probably a level above us at this moment in time. And I think, like you said as well, he's a lad that's come through our youth system. He's a local lad. He's really chilled out, down to earth. There's no ego with him whatsoever. Is he? His family are all Albion
yeah,
fans. And I think, that's probably the worst part of it for me is just, there's always something as a football fan, isn't there? To have someone come up through your youth system who's a local lad who supports the club, his family support the club. There's just something really kind of nice and, you know, quite warming about it.
you
And,
can't help it. Yeah,
you can't help it. And obviously, we're going to, and obviously the guy's a, top player as well. I think, he's destined to become a Premier League player, I think, for sure. So yeah, it's disappointing, but again, I can understand it from the club's perspective. PSR, it gets thrown around, all over the shop at the minute, and how vital a role it plays in clubs, in this day and age. And I think that will obviously help us out massively in that he's homegrown, he's come through our youth system. All that money is going to be pure profit, and it's going to help. Kind of tying into what we were speaking about a minute ago in terms of Patel and his team and their aims and how they want to take the club forward. That money is going to help considerably in terms of paying off some of these debts, but then also bringing some more players in and starting this process that they want to bring
yeah.
in. So yeah, it's one again. I can understand why the club are doing it 100%. There's definitely an element of disappointment there because he's an important player for us, and like I said, he's come through the youth system, homegrown, etc., etc. But again, I can understand it, and I trust that money to get spent, get put back into the squad, and he be replaced accordingly. So
Yeah, I think that's the big thing now. I think slowly we're going to have to start getting used to this. I think this will be the first signing, and maybe in the future when we see this happen more often, I think as a fan base we'll understand it a little bit more because when you kind of step back and I've spoken to a few fans who support other teams, been chatting to a few mates, and they're kind of looking at it from the outside, and they're saying you're getting £10 million for a player and you will reinvest instantly. You're going to gain three players from that, and like you will improve off the back of it. And you can't help but look at it like this because we've never operated like this as a club, have we?
yeah,
We usually hold on to
yeah,
our
yeah,
players for as long as possible and then end up either they go for free or we get a smaller fee. We usually end up getting shafted. It's not often where we kind of become a selling.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
never really been a selling club, have we? In that kind of sense, we kind of lose players. And I kind of look back in the past and think back at all the players that have been linked to moves away and how they ended up, whether they went on a free or you kind of look at Berahino and things like that. You can't help but always have those. So kind of this is now we've got to kind of get used to it. This is the way we're going to operate going forward. And I think that's the way I'm trying to look at it. But
yeah.
I'd got my roasted glass on this morning. I was fuming. I was raging. I'm quite glad I didn't get in front of the camera this morning, to be honest. You kind of helped me the fact that you wanted to do it later on today. So, but I'm thinking, I'm trying to look at it from the positive perspective that this is the
Yeah,
way we're going to operate as a club going forward. And if we get the fee that we want for a player, we should be selling instantly every time now. And I think that's the way we
yeah.
kind of got to look at it. I don't know if you agree now or not.
No, spot on, mate. Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. And that's why I'm not. I think I was the same as you when I kind of when the news broke initially. I was looking at Southampton, and then looking at 10 million, which was getting floated about, and I was initially thinking, I'm disappointed with that. But I think, like you said, once you kind of think about it, and the positive knock on effects that this will have for the club, for Ryan Mason, yeah, I calmed down a bit and realised that this, it's still going to be, maybe we're not getting as much as we, as a fan base, we would like, but
Yeah.
I still think it's going to be a positive move for the club, and it's going to help us progress in the way that our new owners want to.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think I was hoping for more like the 15 to 20 million. I think that's kind of where I looked at it as a whole. But then when you kind of think about it, am I looking at it? That's the similar to what you've said. I've
Yeah, yeah,
spoken to other mates and they've gone, I'm not sure, Sam, kind of thing. Give your head a bit of a wobble,
yeah,
like take your Albion hat off for a second. I'm like, okay, maybe, but we'll see. I want to ask you your thoughts because I've spoken about this on my channel already. I've been away for since the start of the championship. I've not been. I caught the second half of the Portsmouth game. That is literally the only West Brom actual live football I've been able to consume.
yeah.
So I've watched a lot of highlights and things. Be reading up. What have been your thoughts then on the season so far, and where do you expect us to go from here?
Mate, I've been really positive. I've it's been really positive, mate. I've been really impressed with the start that Ryan Mason's made. Look, we can't get too carried away. We're obviously only 3 games into the season, but I was a little bit apprehensive, when Mason was appointed, and then our pre-season was a little bit underwhelming, wasn't it? I don't get
Yeah,
too carried away with pre-season, but it was a little bit underwhelming, and we were we made a few signings, but there probably wasn't the amount of incomes that we wanted as a fan base. So yeah, I was kind of a little bit worried, if I'm being honest, and that probably reflected in the kind of post, my kind of season prediction post that I
yeah,
put up before a ball was kicked in the league. But yeah, I think you know what I've seen on the pitch so far, I like a lot. I was talking to some mates the other day, and I was saying, the way I'd probably summarize it so far is that it seems to be a little bit of a mix of our last two managers, which I think is great. Carlos Corberan, who's obviously very successful, and that was kind of built on solid backline, being very organised, players kind of putting in 100% effort, giving their all. But then there definitely was a kind of sense that players were maybe limited and a little bit afraid to kind of express themselves
yeah,
attacking wise, and kind of taking off those strict, steering away, sorry, from those strict instructions that Carlos Corberan had given them. And that was, maybe kind of moans and groans that came from the fan base. And then we kind of went polar opposite with Tony Mowbray, where, a lot of that organisation and so on almost kind of went out the window a bit. And
yeah,
he was the players, especially our attacking players, almost like free license, to play the game out as they want. And, and he was hoping on kind of individual talent to kind of win the game for us. But that was kind of too far the other way, wasn't it? Whereas, from what I've seen so far, Mason seems to be kind of in between those, those two managers, which I like. I think it's, you can see that he likes to be organised. He likes his team to be, well drilled, and the effort. You can see that he likes, his players to put in 100% effort. Every time they step on the pitch. But I think he's definitely given our attacking players a bit more creative license than Carlos Corberan did. So I think it's a good balance so far. Like I said, I'm not getting too carried away. We're only 3 games into the season, and the 3 games we've played as well. Blackburn, Wrexham, and Portsmouth. I don't want to be disrespectful to those teams, but there's harder challenges ahead, isn't there?
yeah.
We haven't played any of the big boys yet, so early days. But yeah, I'm feeling very positive from everything I've seen so far, mate.
I was going to say, I think I agree with you. My season prediction before the season started, I was quite negative. Not down to pre-season because I've learnt my lesson with pre-season so many times. When I thought Rosenborg was going to be the great striker at the Albion back in the day, Anelka I got excited about. We've all done it.
Yeah,
We've every Albion fan's done it. And like I think the Corbrand first pre-season, we'd pretty much lost every game as well. So I now do not even look at it at all.
yeah,
So I've kind of gone in, and I think it was the signings, like you said. It felt like we were going to really go for it this summer in the sense there was kind of a lot of rumours and things. A lot of things fell through. Like at one point, David Brooks at one point looked like that was
yeah.
coming in. That kind of fell through, and I was kind of a little bit negative. But as you said, kind of from what I've seen, obviously you'll be in a completely better position than I am because you'll have watched a lot more football than I have in that sense. But I'm a little bit more positive, and everyone as a whole seems to be a lot more positive. And what I think he's done really well is kind of got everybody on side because when he was appointed, there was still a few murmurs that some people weren't too pleased with the appointment and things. I kind of really like the kind of mindset 'cause it was something so different, something that hasn't we've not really gone for before. But I like that kind of thing. But he seemed to have already united the fan base instantly, which I think is the biggest positive. Because as long as you can keep everybody positive, everyone's going to ride with you then, no matter what, aren't they? So I think so far it's all looking positive, as you said. And as you said, the balance between the two, attacking defensive wise, is so difficult, and not many managers can do. So the fact that you've saying that there's early signs of that, I think is perfect.
Yeah, I think so. And there was a great quote from him after one of the games where I think someone was post match was kind of pressing him as to what's his style. There seems to be very much you know managers these days. They have to have an approach. They have to have a style. And the answer he gave was like, "Well, I just want to win games, and we'll kind of we'll take each game as it comes on, a case by case basis, and we'll get ourselves ready for each game, and we're not afraid to play differently against different kind of opposition as long as we get the 3 points." And I think that was really encouraging to hear that he realizes first and foremost, we've got to try and get the win, and we've got to try and get the 3 points. And sometimes you might have to adapt and play differently against different kind of opposition, which I personally like that from managers. I think we're in a day and age now where there's a lot of managers and they just seem so unwilling to change and adapt from their supposed style, and more times than not it costs them. So to have a manager who's come in and said, I haven't got a particular style that I'm going to deploy week in, week out. I'm going to change things. I'm going to adapt. We might be a bit more direct. We might be a bit more possession based. I think that's great to hear.
I'm completely with you on this. It sounds like you literally quoting exactly some of my things. I talk about it all the time. It really does my head in when managers talk about styles and things, and they're so reluctant to play in a certain way. You see it like I always think with Russell Martin. I don't mean to pick on him. I used to call him Rylan all the time with that photo and things. When he used to play that system that works so well in the Championship, and then I used to think at the start it was naivety, but now I'm starting to look at it as a whole with some managers. It's like an arrogance where they refuse to change the way they play. And it does my head in when you watch some sides and you just think, you are just killing yourself here. Whereas I really like a manager who kind of steps back, look at the assets they've got, and if they're able to adapt towards their opposition, like Thomas Frank, I always think he's the perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it already with Tottenham so far this season. If managers can do that, I think that's the perfect type of manager and the perfect way you should be playing personally. But yeah, as a whole, I'm feeling quite positive, and I'm glad you've said the same. But I really appreciate you coming on the channel, by the way. So I think we'll definitely have to do this again. By the way, I'll get you back on the channel whenever, and if you ever need me for any of your content, by the way, I'll happily come on your side of things. Is there anything you want to plug? I'll link it all down below. Have however long you need now. Just shout out whatever you want.
Yeah, mate. Well, look, yeah, but most of my content's through Instagram. So my West Brom page on Instagram is BaggiesBulletin. So yeah, if you guys, if any of your listeners aren't already following, especially obviously Albion fans, be absolutely fantastic if you can jump on Instagram and give me a follow. And like I was mentioning to you before we went live, I've started getting involved with a West Brom podcast called the Hawthorns Debate Club, and they're on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. Just type it in and it will come up. But yeah, we're trying to build up a bit of interest and a few more followers on there as well. So yeah, if you can kind of give us a follow on the Hawthorns Debate Club as well, that'd be absolutely fantastic, and we'd really appreciate it, mate.
No, yeah. The links to all of those guys will be down below. And if I haven't put it in there, comment to remind me because I have done that before. I've told people to go and check it out. I promise you I'll put it in there. But no, I really appreciate you coming on, Tom. And look at this positivity. It's brilliant, isn't it? I know it sounds ridiculous. Actually, like smiling whilst talking about the Albion. I stopped talking about the Albion on this YouTube channel for about a year because I realised I was only gaining traction because people were coming on to laugh. So I was like, no, no more Albion stuff for a while. So I was like, it was
I know,
heavy in the
I know.
Steve Bruce era. I was like, no, forget it.
Yeah, mate, I know how you feel with that, but mate, look, 100%. I think I'll finish on this. I think these new owners are absolutely fantastic, mate. I think they've got the best interests of the club at heart. And, I think we're only going to head in one direction, under these guys. I think they're really switched on and know what it takes for a club of our size, that is, they know what it takes
Yeah.
for us to be a success. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to what the future holds under these guys. And as we said, Ryan Mason as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Retweet what he's just said there. Retweet exactly what Tom said. It's very positive for once, and I'm the exact same. I love the owners. But thank you again, Tom, for coming on the channel. Click the link, guys, down below. Go check him out on all of his Instagram and all of the content, and go check out the podcast as well. That'll be down there as well. But really appreciate it, Tom, and hopefully we'll get you back on the channel soon and more
Definitely.
positivity. Who
Yeah,
knows? This is the
definitely,
Albion, so the next video might be an interesting one. But no, thank you
mate.
guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you very soon. Thank you.